Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 27th meeting of the North Andover Select Board. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:30 p.m. and ask that you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there anybody here to make a public comment? Stan, I'm so glad.
Because there's no public comment at the end. Stan Lippert, 43 Stonecleave Road. I know it's a little premature, but I wanted to compliment the Economic Development and Planning Department on such a wonderful job on the website they put together. I would have said this at the end, but I can't. When I looked at that based on the agenda tonight, I was so impressed about what they've done. It's not only extremely attractive, it's very informative and also very helpful. So I'm just so impressed by that, and I think Andrew Shapiro and Gene Enright and everybody deserve a lot of credit for having done that. I know that's going to be a big help for people who are trying to start businesses and come to North Andover. So I think that's just a wonderful thing, so I wanted to say that.
Thank you. We are going to start with our governmental reports. Item A is the Planning Board recommendations for town meeting. Planning Board Chair Eitan Goldberg is going to run us through the Planning Board recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So our recommendations, we did make recommendations on articles not submitted by the Planning Board, and I'll just briefly touch that we voted unanimously to recommend favorable action on authorization to accept grants of easements, authorization to grant easements, the confirmatory land taking proposal for the recreation complex, Article 10, as well as the CPC proposals. So we recommended unanimous favorable recommendations on all of those. In terms of Planning Board, we don't have a lot of articles this year. A bunch of them are actually together, and they're all, none of them are what I would say is earth-shattering articles here. So if anyone has any questions about the wording or wants to get into the weeds, we can, but I'll just kind of briefly describe them for you, and then if you have any questions, just let me know. Okay, Article 31 is, so as you all know, we enacted an inclusionary housing bylaw in the recent town meeting, and we actually just approved our first project to fall under the inclusionary housing bylaw. That one's going to have 24 units, so 3 of them are going to be affordable units. That's our first time that's one's come before us. We found that we needed to do some cleanup of this article. There was a requirement for some marketing and materials to be produced that said it had to be done before a building permit. That didn't really make sense, so we just changed that to a certificate of occupancy. And then the major cleanup we did was in our for our continuing care retirement center bylaw. That already has bonuses and density requirements and bonuses that are already found in that bylaw, and it didn't make sense to have it in both places. So we're really just saying that the density bonuses and payment in lieu that's found already in our continuing care retirement center bylaw that already exists, we're just going to go with that instead of making you have to look at 2 different places and having kind of 2 different requirements. So we're just cleaning that up. That is Article 31. That was recommended favorably by unanimous vote of the board. Article 32 is about the floodplain. We're part of the floodplain insurance. So anyone who's in the floodplain has to have floodplain insurance. To do that, we have to have a bylaw that matches FEMA requirements. FEMA updated its maps and updated its bylaw. We have to do the same. So we're mirroring FEMA's language so that anyone in the floodplain can actually qualify for the insurance that their mortgages are going to require that they get anyway. So this is to, and basically we just take our old flood bylaw, we're going to cross that all out and just put in the new language, which is consistent with FEMA's language. Okay, and that was also that was presented to us by Amy Maxner, as well as a consultant that was hired, and Jean, and that was a unanimous recommendation for favorable action by the planning board. Then we have Article 33 about continuing care retirement center. So this one is to clean up, and potentially there's the potential that one of our continuing care retirement centers may look to expand in the near future. And the bylaw isn't clear as to whether or not you have to have a nursing home on site on the lot that the district is under, or whether you can have affiliated housing. And so we wanted to make it clear, but also narrow the language to say that, okay, if you have a continuing care retirement center in town, so that's like Edgewood, you can open up another continuing care retirement center, so another group of housing that would support folks in that stage of life, but you don't necessarily have to have a nursing home, in quotations, a state licensed nursing home on site if you were affiliated with the currently existing. So someone like Edgewood could open a second facility, have the same type of housing, because what we're hearing from them is that the need for the specific nursing home type is kind of fading out, but we still need, what they're saying is that they opened one in New Hampshire and the actual housing facilities are being booked rapidly. So what they need is more room for those housing facilities, and then so say it was nearby in town, there could be shuttles or other transportation or other Zoom services or everything else to connect it to the other property in town. So this allows for that as long as all the other requirements of the bylaw are met. Allows for a project in the future. That project would still have to get a special permit and things like that if one were to develop. This was a unanimous favorable recommendation by the planning board. The next bylaw is 34. This is what we're calling a Dover bylaw. So as most of you know, state law has something called the Dover Amendment under General Law 40A, Section 3. And the Dover Amendment says that the town has limited, but not none, but has limited zoning that it can do when there is a use that is educational, religious, or a childcare facility. So we do have certain things that we can regulate in terms of setbacks and heights and density and things like that. But as a rule, there's a lot that we can't require. Right now, those uses go through our site plan, which they don't have to. So if they didn't want to, they could just say, we don't want to go through this. This actually, then we could say, so if they said, we don't want to go through site plan, we could say, well, we still have to, we can still regulate you, but we don't actually have a process for that. So this actually creates a process for regulating when anyone wants to come under the Dover Amendment. So that would include any educational uses, both that could be public, that could be private colleges, things like that. And religious uses as well as childcare facilities, they would have to go through this process that is very similar to our current site plan. So we're calling it a limited site plan. And we'd examine the bulk of structures, adequacy of open spaces, the layout, parking, lighting, water drainage, adequacy of fire protection, and the like. So most of the stuff that we would do anyway under a site plan, we would do here. So we have a whole procedure for that, and this was also a unanimous favorable recommendation by the planning board.
What are the requirements for something that's applying under the Dover Amendment? They don't have to go through all of this site plan review, any of this?
So technically, in our bylaw, what would happen is I'll ask you. So if someone wanted to pull a building permit, and I'll just use we'll say a church, or we'll say, or Merrimack College, and they wanted to pull a building permit, then the building inspector would say, okay, is this a use covered by Dover? Just because it's a church or a college doesn't necessarily mean it is, right? So if a college built a hotel, could be if people are staffing it and the kids are learning about hotel management, then it might be educational use. If it was just for the kind of private use of the college, it might not be considered. But let's say it's an educational use, it's a school building. They would pull it, they could say, we're doing this, the Dover Amendment, and we're going to build it. And we don't have they don't have to do anything for zoning.
Right.
Now, what we could say is if they started to build it and we thought it was too big, or we thought it wasn't close enough to setbacks, we could say, hey, we want to regulate you, and we think that's too close, or we think that's that you can only do a certain height. There's not actually a process for that, so we would have to come up with some sort of process for making that happen. I don't know if that would be, frankly, I don't know exactly how that would work. We haven't encountered it yet, and we're trying not to have to encounter that by creating this bylaw that says, okay, if you start to build a building and it's going to be an educational use, you go to the building inspector, he determines, okay, this is something that falls under Dover, now you have to do this limited site plan through this bylaw. So we're avoiding the problem, which luckily hasn't arisen yet. We foresee that it likely will in the future, where we wouldn't have an actual process which could get worked out. It could lead to litigation. It just could get to be messy.
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation.
Sure. And then the remaining articles, so one of the things that, as Jean was putting together the bylaw, and we looked back and see that the definitions in some of our bylaws have changed as to actually what the Dover language actually is. So we're just changing everything to match up with the state law language for child care facility, and making sure that that is everywhere in our tables and in our bylaws, just with the appropriate language. And that's what the remaining articles do. All of those were all voted favorable with unanimous recommendation. And that is, unless a citizen petition comes in, that's everything we have from the planning board in terms of zoning.
Can I ask you a few questions about the flood?
Sure.
And it's an area where I have some experience being in my business. So, and I don't know this has changed, but this is sort of an FYI, actually, I think, for our citizens, that if it's determined that you are in a flood zone, what the federal government and I guess FEMA were doing, they were taking overhead shots, determining what was a flood zone, not depth. So you could be literally 100 feet away from your property, and the Merrimack River could be 100 feet down below. I mean, that's one heck of a flood. And you're paying by government edict for flood insurance, and you don't need it. What you can do is have a flood survey and contest it. But meanwhile, you could have been paying for flood insurance for decades, and you didn't even need it all along, because people don't quite understand that. Unless it's recently changed. But I have assisted some of my clients saying, you need to get a flood survey, because you're not in a flood zone. There's no way. So did that come up in conversation or anything like that, or any?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so that was discussed at the, it's not necessarily germane to this bylaw. So part of the redoing of the maps and people trying to contest whether they're in the flood zone led to some of this, but the actual bylaw itself is just necessary so that people are able to get flood insurance, because without a bylaw that matches FEMA, you can't even get it, and therefore you might not even be able to get a mortgage if you're
Correct.
if you're considered to be in the flood zone. But definitely there are places that shouldn't be, and you need to get a survey done. And the difficulty is that flood insurance actually doesn't even cover very much. It is very, very specific as to how the water comes over and onto your property for where it will cover. I was in the flood zone for several years.
So yes, I remember where you used to live.
Right.
Yes, you were.
And yeah, it's expensive, and the amount, you can't even negotiate the insurance because it's set by the government of how much the price is.
But they haven't even done their due diligence as
Nope.
they charged you. And you
Yep.
could be paying thousands of dollars for years,
Yep.
and you don't get your money back. You're lucky if you get a portion of the previous year, if you can prove that you really are not in a flood zone. But so I'm kind of more mentioning it to people out
Yep.
there that, and you can also build up your, it's usually comes from where there's an opening into the house
Right.
by way of a bulkhead or something. And you can often just remediate that by building it up. And, because you could be off by an inch.
Right.
So you know about it because you've, but
Yep.
I just wanted to kind of, sort of a public service announcement. If you're getting charged for flood insurance and you've never even had water in your basement, you might want to get a survey.
It's a good time to talk about it if we're talking about it, just to get that, to look into that, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right.
Just a question, back to the, like the Edgewood and the
Mm-hmm.
aging facilities. So as we expand the housing, but you said that they feel the nursing home demand is going down?
For the actual, so Edgewood has the actual nursing home, right? The
Right.
state licensed facility
Yep.
where you have the medical care. And then they have surrounding buildings, and so that you can have your whole, kind of life cycle and everything you want
Right.
on that facility. Those surrounding and associated buildings are what they're finding the most demand for. So
Right.
assisted living, step-down living with nurses coming in,
Yeah.
other things on the property, services. They're finding an extensive demand for that. But the actual inpatient living in a nursing home, they're finding is not as in demand, that
demand.
people are choosing other options.
Right.
Or that. So if they wanted to build another there's only so much housing because of our CCRC.
Yeah.
You only have a certain amount of units that you can build
have,
that
yeah.
you can build on one
Okay.
lot, and so they really don't have the capacity to build anymore on the current lots based on the numbers that they've had. And when you do, you have to pay for it as well. So if you wanted to build that associated housing, right, so you found somewhere else in town, it has to be in town, it has to be associated with one in town, then you could build those other housing, but you wouldn't necessarily have to build the state licensed facility. You could, but
You don't have to.
you would have to
Didn't-
prove that it's affiliated. We haven't defined that, but to me, it's more than just a name on the door. It's you have to show that there are services going back and forth, that this isn't just an apartment building that happens to say Edgewood on it. It's an outbranching of what you're already doing,
Right.
and that they're using the same facilities and services and things like that.
Okay.
So that's the idea behind it.
Okay.
And I think they have places in mind. I think they've been looking, but this would allow kind of a project in the future to go forward.
To do that. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other commentary?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Kind of an interesting planning board list this year in comparison to other years. So.
It's been nicely quiet for
There we
us.
go.
for
Just-
that.
I didn't mean
Don't
that,
speak.
but it's
Shush.
an easier list than fast.
Moving on to item B, our new community and economic development website, which we've already heard rave reviews of. So, Andrew Shapiro, please come tell us all about it.
Thank you. Happy to share with you what we've been working on. Let me just get plugged in here. All right, great. For the record, Andrew Shapiro, Director of Community and Economic Development. And I also just want to say a quick thank you to Stan for getting up and recognizing us. Very flattering. Always nice to be recognized for work that we do. And as I always say, and this is the case with this project as well, it is definitely a team effort. I worked closely with Gene Enright on this project, our planning director, as well as our former staff planner, Dan Beckley. And this was also a project, just so folks at home know and everyone here knows, that we worked on jointly with MVPC as well, our regional planning agency. And what happened is we worked with them and a third-party web developer called Gravoc Associates to develop this site, which we think looks great standing alone as sort of a site that can highlight all the town's assets and strengths to property owners, developers, businesses, and others who want to get to know what the town is all about and the different resources available to them and the different information that might help guide them in their decision-making process to establish or grow a business here. And so with that, I'll go right to this site, and I just wanted to show you all this. This is linked to, at this point, from the town's community and economic development webpage, and we can find a more prominent place for it as well on the home pages when we have an opportunity to do so. But the URL for the site is choosenorthandover.com, so a pretty easy site to remember and to type in. And here's our landing page right here. You can see we've tried to keep sort of the color scheme of the town in place as far as the town website goes. But we have some slick imagery here, some drone footage that we shot this summer, which I think looks really nice as a backdrop. And a host of links that go to a variety of pages that I'll quickly guide you through. We try to highlight reasons why North Andover is a great place to do business and invest. We have a welcome message from the town manager that we taped through GovCAM. We've got some testimonials and quotes from businesses in town, and we can rotate these through on occasion. We've got news and highlights, sort of a blog posting area of sorts, and we have like ribbon cuttings or other news articles that come out. We have a social media feed on the left-hand side of the page. And we've got some other links to places so the Shop and Dine Local, for instance, goes right to the North Andover Merchants Association when it pops up here. Yep. And if you wanted to book your next event at the Stevens Estate, we highlight that page as well. And we can certainly change these out as time goes on. And so I'll go through some of the main pages here for you. Why North Andover? Basically a good sort of background set of information about the town, its resources, its assets. We get into facts and figures. So we have information that's populated through data that is sourced by MVPC on the back end. So this information will always be up to date because they house this information for us. We have information about location and access, having a link to the website for the MBTA, the MVRTA, or MIVA now, as it's called, the airport, some information about our business-friendly approach, and more information about sort of our main commercial corridors, Route 114, of course, Route 125, the downtown, some information about what we do in terms of education, how we encourage businesses to come here, some different projects we have going on, and some of our assets. And then, of course, on the bottom of the pages, we're going to be having some additional links and testimonials from business and property owners as well. If I go over to the facts and figures page, and I'm moving quickly just because I'll let everyone at home and everyone here, go through this page at their own leisure, and you can certainly reach out to me if you have any questions or follow up. But we're just going to be updating this over time, and I think we'll get more and more robust as time goes on. So businesses and jobs, some information about that. And when you click to the Learn More button, it pops up a visualization that kind of gives you some information and background information about what our leading industries here in the area are. So manufacturing jobs, for instance, 2,997 jobs, 81 establishments, followed by healthcare and social services. So we are a pretty robust manufacturing center, if I may say so myself. Always good to see professional, scientific, and technical services also represented. 67.44% of those businesses employ between 1 and 4 employees. So you get some good hard data on these areas. I'll show you one other visualization. You can click out any one of these and they bring you to this type of information. Population demographics, a little over 30,000 people, or close to 31,000 at this point. The age distribution, median age being 40. sort of a graphical representation of our population growth. We've actually dipped a little bit in population over the last 2 years, believe it or not. But the trend is up. So a lot of good information here. The one that I think is actually kind of the neatest, in my opinion, if I may say so myself, is the talent pool. So if you go into here, this is another database, again, maintained for us by MVPC. You can look at a catchment area of 20-mile radius, around North Andover, and it shows you the number of people that have various degrees. So the highest presence of degrees in the 20-mile radius is health professions and related programs. So if you click into that, you'll see that registered nursing, has a high presence within that category. 755 total individuals, comprising 366 associate's degree holders, 363 bachelor's degree holders, 26 master's degree holders. So it just gives companies that are looking to locate here some information about sort of the level of expertise, the education that people have. It tells you where people are graduating from. We have a high degree of individuals graduating from UMass Lowell, for instance, followed by Tufts, Salem State, Merrimack. And you can change the catchment area. So you can change the radius to, let's say, 5 miles. And get that information, and it'll populate a little differently. So education is a higher, there's a higher amount of people with education degrees in the 5-mile radius. And you can share the report on social media, or you can export it into a PDF if you wanted to create a report. So I think that's kind of neat. We have our permitting guide. I think we shared with you all a little earlier, maybe later last year, a PDF version of a permitting guide. And this sort of takes that information and brings it into sort of a web format. And we still have the link to the PDF guide right here if people wanted to reference that. We have a link to find available commercial properties that I'll show you in a minute. Kind of gives you some steps to go through if you're filing, for instance, a business certificate, meeting with town, what kind of inspections you may need. And if you scroll further below, there are some FAQs that you can run through.
I like the sign one.
The sign one,
'Cause
always
because
important.
if people sometimes don't realize they need to have a sign permit.
That's right. You need a sign permit. We
And
could
it can
probably
be
develop
very
this one a little
expensive to
further out.
stay,
But yeah.
So I'm really happy about that one.
True. So I think this is a great resource for businesses, both businesses that are coming to town or even existing businesses that need to do additional, permitting. I think it's helpful either way. We have a link to resources. I'll show you this in a moment. Yet another database that's maintained by the by MVPC, and they have links and information to a variety of programs run by the state and run by 501c3s, nonprofits, and organizations geared towards technical assistance for businesses and access to capital. So all helpful information. We have information on available properties. So I have some featured listings up here of, things like the Mills, First and Main, 1210 Osgood Street, so the signature commons in front of the Princeton Properties development. But if you go down here, the only kind of finicky thing with this part of the website is you have to type in North Andover as your location. So by default, it kind of shows you everything in the Merrimack Valley. So we kind of direct folks to do that up here in the directions, and that's why I start off the page with a few featured listings. But again, this is another database that's maintained by the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and it's a good, I think it's a good sort of representation of the various properties throughout town that are available to small businesses that are looking for space. So it gives you property details, the type of space it is, the lease rate if it's listed, total available space. zoning, and then a contact if you wanted to reach out to someone. So I think all of it's helpful information. I don't know why this photo is not coming up, but that's certainly helpful. And then, as I mentioned, from the front page, we have a news and highlights page, and this is just the page itself. So like recently, Roma Joe's came in, and there was a North Shore Mag article for it. So we just kind of give a little bit of a blurb about it, and then we have a link to the larger article that folks can go to. So we think that's helpful. And then, of course, a contact page. So that's it in a nutshell. Again, one of the things my division strives to do is try to be helpful to small businesses, provide information, have more and more resources available to businesses and property owners so that they know what to do in all kinds of situations. But at the end of the day, we're always available to them on the phone, email, in-person meetings, and we always encourage that as well. But this is just another resource for them to be able to tap into. So we're happy to get it up. I'd say it's in kind of a soft opening phase right now. I'd like to get a press release out there in the next week or two, and we'll try to make it a little more prominently seen on the town's homepage so folks can click right to it. And I'll take any questions.
That's an impressive amount of information.
Thanks.
I can envision how this went down. It was like, oh, and this. Oh, and we want to add
Yep.
this, right? And it grew into this masterpiece resource for people. So, and the partnership with MVPC is pretty great also. Hopefully they'll, keep all those stats up for us.
I think, I agree. And I think we were kind of the guinea pig with them. I think they're interested in trying to replicate this with other
Yes,
communities throughout
sure.
the region. And we were the first ones to step out and try this. And so they were a great partner on this.
Pretty amazing.
I love
So,
the photography and the saturation of color, it just
photos
really
are
pops.
great.
And thank you for putting the banner up.
Of course.
I was gonna say the same thing with the photography. It's
It's
all
amazing.
crisp. It's not like repurposed photos. It seems like these are photos that were taken specifically for this
Yeah.
site and used in the site. So, and plus the drone footage is
Yes.
really cool too. Just the way it,
That's
kind
great.
of buzzes in like that. Yeah, no, great job on this. And, just clicking around on it, there's so much information out there. And, thankfully all the links work. I haven't found any that haven't worked yet. Which a lot of times on a new website that happens a
Yeah.
lot, right? You
Yeah.
get these dead links, but it seems to be well designed and well rolled out.
Thank you.
You guys did a really lovely job, and it does such a nice job highlighting why businesses want to come to North Andover and why we would be a good spot for them to put their roots down and add to our community. So thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you to the whole team.
Yep,
I
absolutely.
thought that the PDF was great, and now this is even better.
We're always trying to up the ante. Always trying to up the ante, so.
Yes, thank you. You sure did.
Like the folks that are visiting it and what sections they're visiting and
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have to
the
get
stats.
a little more familiar with the back end of the site. It's WordPress, for those in the room who know a little bit about web design. So I have to get a little bit familiar with the sort of the analytics and how you work those. So I'll be interested to see that as well. Yeah,
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you so much.
thanks.
Do you have all this drone footage?
So yeah, actually, I have the raw footage. So Gravoc, the team that developed the webpage, they have a drone service, so we kind of added this into the mix. And actually, I want to thank Mike Smolak of Smolak Farms. There's a piece in here that we were able to splice in there of his farm.
Yeah.
That was really nice. It was shot in like the fall at peak color time. So it's probably only in here for like 3 seconds. But it's still, it makes the piece. It rounds it out. But yeah, we have the raw footage and we can kind of use it as we wish.
As we wish, yeah. We
So-
should make sure we keep it somewhere safe, too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to move on to new business now, and item A is a public hearing that we had continued from February 27th, 23. It was the application from AT&T for small cell wireless installation on the utility pole, and we actually have received a request to continue this again to the April 24th meeting, so.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we continue the AT&T public hearing until April 24th.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Awesome. Okay, moving on to new business item B, Nancy Sorrow and friends from the North Andover Citizens for Sustainable Living will present regarding their petition for a plastic bag ban in North Andover. So welcome, we're happy to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. So my name is Nancy Sarro. While Keith is pulling up the PowerPoint, I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction to this project. So back in 2019, the Sustainability Committee started working on a plastic bag restriction for North Andover, and they did a presentation to the Select Board in early 2020. Well, we all know what happened in 2020. So the whole thing got put on hold. I happened to be at that Select Board meeting, so I was really excited to see what was presented, and then started following up with the Sustainability Committee about where the project stood and what was going on. And basically, it turned out that no one on the Sustainability Committee really had the bandwidth to restart it again. So we formed a small citizens group to work on this, and we do have the full support of the Sustainability Committee, but the citizens group is doing the bulk of the work. So it's myself and Keith Connors and Lynn Langton, and they're actually going to, Keith and Lynn are going to present the PowerPoint, most of it, and then Adrienne Goldman is also here, and she was the one that had presented to you back in 2020, and she's our linchpin with the Sustainability Committee. Okay, with that, I'm gonna hopefully get the PowerPoint up and running.
I'm sorry, I knew it was earlier, so we had to take it down. I know,
gonna be all dressed up
my
in your ways to
apologies.
We did have this all set, but we have our trust in Bill. He got us going the last time.
How did you open it from crew?
Uh,
Open it once more. Okay, let's see this.
I wonder if we could get rid of that.
Yeah, I can't find my cursor.
Oh, right here.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, good job.
Where's your present?
Do you think it could be over to the right?
Give me 1 second. I'll be right there. It's not letting me access that for some reason.
Where's that? Try that.
Okay.
It's still not live. Do you want to try me to get out completely? And,
Yeah, try. Go back. I got timed out on you.
okay. Now I'm with you. Where did it? Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, but I gotta do this one. I'm gonna do Gmail. It's not there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no internet.
Oh, that's why.
That's why.
Sorry for the delay.
That's okay.
Okay, you're connected now.
Okay, so now it's this one. It's this.
Okay, let me see 1 second.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you're all set. I think. Find your cursor and you're all set.
Okay. Yep, I have it. Yep. Okay. All right, thank you. Sorry for that
Sorry.
delay.
No,
Nice
thank
to
you.
thank you for having us here. I'm Keith Connors. This is my sister Lynn Langton, and we'll present the PowerPoint for you. So first, we're going to start with this overview slide. So the areas that we're going to cover is the plastic problem as it relates to volume, health, and recycling. Then we'll get into the current status of plastic bag regulation in our state and local region. And then we'll conclude with the warrant proposal that we're submitting and the associated benefits with it. So we'll start with the plastic problem. In looking at the plastic problem by its sheer volume, a quantity that is overwhelming our land and our seas.
By 2050, oceans will contain more plastic than fish by weight. So this slide right here illustrates how plastic has oversaturated our planet. Currently, there are 5 large floating plastic islands in our oceans, and the largest is in the Pacific, and it is 3 times the size of France. But there's also a large floating plastic island off in the Atlantic Ocean. And plastic just doesn't find its way into our oceans. It also is a disposal problem on land where we have a need for expanded landfills. And plastic is ubiquitous, so it destroys our beauty of our natural land and our seascapes.
So now we're going to go from the global to the local, and this slide considers the volume of plastic bag usage in our town. According to a National Geographic article, each person uses approximately 365 plastic bags annually. Where North Andover has a population of about 30,915 citizens, according to the most recent census, this means approximately 11.3 million plastic bags are used by our town per year. This massive volume has negative consequences for which we can and should do better.
So even when plastic bags are disposed of properly, they can escape from recycling and trash bins, garbage trucks, landfills, causing visual blight and clogged drains. And clogged drains, of course, can lead to flooding and create a host of other problems. The 3 pictures that you see before you were taken in North Andover. The left one is from 114. The middle one is plastics and trash picked up around Lake Cochituick on a Earth Day. Citizens picked that up. And the right is Becky's Pond behind Rocky's Hardware.
So they're not drone pictures, but they're still local pictures.
The plastic problem, it's harmful to humans and animals. Only humans make waste that nature can't digest. Plastics take 500 to 1,000 years to break down, and they never fully biodegrade. Instead, plastics break down into tiny particles of various sizes, the smallest of which are called nanoplastics. These tiny particles end up in our water and soil, contaminating our food chain and entering our body, as shown in the illustration on the right. And in case you can't read the caption, those particles shown on the person's finger were taken from tissue samples collected from the lungs, liver, spleen, and kidneys of a human.
The pervasiveness of plastic waste in the ocean and land harm and kill animals by entanglement, suffocation, choking, and intestinal blockages, as seen in these disturbing pictures. According to Earth.org and multiple other sources, about 100,000 marine animals are killed by plastic bags annually.
In the United States, 12 million gallons of oil are required to produce plastic bags. Of all the oil extracted annually, 8 to 10% of it is used in making plastics. The dirty extraction process of fossil fuels causes harm to humans by polluting the air with toxic particulates and polluting our water with arsenic, lead, chlorine, and mercury. And as we all know, the burning of fossil fuel creates greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change.
The harm to human and animal health also occurs at the disposal of plastic bags here in North Andover, because North Andover incinerates its trash at Wheelabrator, located on Holt Road. Burned plastics release toxic gases like dioxins, furans, biphenyls, and phthalates. And these toxins can disrupt neurodevelopment, endocrine, and reproductive functions. Now, next, we'll look at the plastic problem as it relates to recycling. And so, as you see in this slide, many people give their best efforts to recycle, but plastic bags are not easy to recycle. The picture on the left-hand side shows the collection receptacles found on the inside entranceway of North Andover Market Basket. The left-hand picture is a snapshot of North Andover's list of acceptable recyclables. The list item captured in the no column, that last column, you can see that plastic bags are not accepted in North Andover's curbside recycling.
This chart was generated by the EPA and illustrates how plastic waste is managed in our country. So first off, you can see how plastics waste has just exploded over the last 50 years and just how little of it gets recycled. The dark blue that you see at the top is the recycled plastic, and the middle light blue is plastic that's incinerated, and the big massive gray area is plastic going to landfills.
So only 5% of plastic bags in the U.S. get recycled. It was interesting. We, myself and Nancy, went to the Market Basket in North Andover to do a survey to see how accurate this might be just locally. So for an hour, we stood at both entrances, and we counted the number of customers taking plastic bags and the number of customers returning them. The result was that 273 shoppers took plastic bags at the checkout, and only 7% of them returned them. We know this is anecdotal, but it does speak to the issue of how many people are actually recycling plastic bags for the one-time use of them.
The current status of plastic bag regulation in our state and local region. This slide is a very popular slide when we show this presentation. It's statewide, and the dark green areas show the 154 towns that have already passed plastic bag regulations, which represents 67% of our state's population. Towns that are close to us that have passed include Amesbury, Andover, Billerica, Chelmsford, Georgetown, Haverhill, Lowell, Newburyport, Raleigh, Tewksbury, and Wilmington. And now we'll drill down into the warrant article proposal itself and its associated benefits. Let's see, our proposal is to regulate checkout bags by requiring they are paper or reusable at establishments that carry any type of food. And we set it up for establishments carrying food, so because that is currently what our Board of Health regulates. So therefore, establishments like CVS and TJ Maxx would still be incorporated under that, because when it mentions any type of food, it's any type of wrapped food or served food. So CVS and TJ Maxx have the wrapped candy bars or chip bags at checkout.
And this slide shows some of the many plastic bags that will still be available to customers and town citizens. So your ice bag, your vegetable bag, your chicken bag, etc. And those are available because they're not bags that you receive at checkout. And then, of course, your dry cleaner, newspaper, plastic bags are still, available and will be in use and are not part of a restriction. And lastly, of course, you can still buy plastic bags as you will to line your trash cans, kitchen containers, etc. So this really is just the plastic bags at checkout.
And we just want to make sure people know that they can still get their free dog poo bags if they're really looking closely and saving what you see the slide above you. Warrant article details. What businesses does this warrant article affect? So that's all those selling human and animal food products, and which also have more than 3,000 square feet of finished floor area. And the examples are Market Basket, TJ Maxx, Petco, CVS, Bertucci's. And who is not affected? Those not selling food products, and we have exemptions for schools, nonprofits, festivals, and religious institutions. How would this be enforced? By our North Andover Health Department or its designees. And when would it start? January 1st, 2024, and that's to give any businesses time to whittle down what stock they have of their plastic bags currently.
And Nancy?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak to the business input. We visited Thank you. We visited about 20 businesses, and 11 of the businesses were outright supportive or only use paper anyway. 6 small businesses had concerns. And of the 11 businesses that we visited that included, or that were supportive outright, included Tripoli, Butcher Boy, Perfecto's, restaurants such as Shenju, J&M Subs, and Boston Chowder Company, and Jimmy's. 6 small businesses had concerns or were unwilling to discuss. 1 business owner with multiple businesses had concerns. 1 business was likely supported, but we still need to follow up, and 1 deferred to corporate. I will mention that the businesses in town that are part of chains, we didn't talk to directly because they already know how to accommodate this. They have faced this in many other towns. The 1 owner that we talked to that has 3 businesses in town had kind of a general concern about this, this is just one more regulation. So we determined that we did kind of make an assessment that the smaller businesses, we did recognize from some of the feedback that we received due to less economies of scale that they might have a harder time adjusting to the change. So our original draft did not have any size threshold, and based on the feedback from the businesses, we did build in a 3,000 square foot threshold. And we determined that the 3,000 square feet, there is a precedent for that. So most other towns do not limit it to only certain size businesses, but there are the few that do, which include Haverhill, Plymouth, and Lowell. They use the same 3,000 square foot threshold. And I think the important thing to note here is of the businesses that we talked to, this change accommodates all the businesses that had concerns except for 1 business owner that has 3 businesses, and 2 of the 3 businesses would be exempt, and 1 business would still fall under the regulation. Okay.
So on this slide, we understand that the warrant article, which creates change, might pose a few challenges. We address some of those potential challenges in this slide. For example, we understand the cost of reusable bags for senior citizens and others on fixed income could be a challenge. Excuse me. To address that challenge, our group, the North Andover Citizens for Sustainable Living, has secured free bags to give away to those who need it. And we are also going to be seeking out grants and donations to purchase additional reusable bags. And of course, as Nancy was just referencing, there's concern around business cost and the increase to retailers for bags so our group will promote the use of reusable bags, and the paper bag costs retailers are currently experiencing clearly will go down as more people convert to their reusable bags. So over time, their cost overall will go down because they won't have the cost of purchasing plastic bags, and the use of paper bags will also go down. And we've seen this in multiple articles and studies that's happened across the country in towns and cities that have implemented this.
Last is the benefits of passing the regulation and using reusable bags. So of course, there's a reduction in litter, and it won't cause harm to people, plants, or animals. It lessens our use of fossil fuels. It lessens the toxins emitted from our incinerator. Reusable bags are superior in quality because they won't rip or tear, and they're more convenient to carry because they have shoulder straps. They hold more items, and that means less trips from your car to your house with groceries.
And lastly, we just humbly ask for your support for this initiative to preserve our environment for the future, for our future generations, for the better environment and health of our children and ourselves, and for a sustainable community here in North Andover. So thank you for your time and going through our presentation with us. We appreciate it.
And I'd like to add that we really hope the Select Board recommends favorable action on this article, but we're happy to entertain any questions.
Yeah.
You seem to interchangeably use the word plastic. So was it, when you were counting the plastic, were you counting any bottled plastic or along with the bag plastic? That when you were talking about concerns to the environment, did you put it all together, or were you just talking plastic bags?
I'll answer to start. No, good observation. So when we're talking about some of the more broader concerns around the environment, it was plastics in general.
That's
When we
how I interpreted
yeah,
it.
so you were correct. when we're talking about specific data around our town and what our proposal is hoping to achieve, the aspirations of the goal of really reducing single-use plastic here in North Andover, we were specific to the plastic bags.
And then you talked about the incineration. Did you get that data from Wheelabrator? Because we've, through the years, have insisted Wheelabrator keep upgrading their systems with scrubbers and air quality. And actually, I mean, I don't know what it is now, but in recent past, we felt as though they were really doing a pretty good job with their scrubbers and all sorts of things of their air emissions. So did you use that data from them
That's a good
or
question.
just in
You
general?
had one on that one, right? Or you
Well, I'll start. Yes, Wheelabrator definitely has, put in the scrubbers. But we have to remember that there are still particles and things that do get past the scrubbers, and that's obviously why it has to continually be monitored, right?
Oh, yeah, and no, it does.
Yeah, and then also that the scrubbers are gathering up all the dioxins and stuff, and so where does all that fly ash go? So it's not like it's getting rid of it. So now there's the problem with the fly ash, and wherever that gets deposited, you're still dealing with a toxic
But
substance.
have you discussed this directly with Wheelabrator as to how they handle that? I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
But I think in fairness to them, if there is a solution, we
Yeah,
should be
yeah.
aware of it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Did you?
But the slide, I think the slide spoke to volume, to plastics that were being incinerated. It didn't really speak to the emissions, right? I mean, you did say that some of these emissions are toxic, but we talked about the volume. And I don't know that changes based on the scrubbers. I think that's still, the volume's the volume, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's good feedback. We can try to do that. I don't
Because I think that would say a lot,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I mean,
Either way.
Mhm.
It becomes.
Yeah, it's,
It would say a lot, but you also have to remember that it's not just plastic toxins that come from incineration. It's the
There's other
plastics that get
things.
thrown in the trash that can't get
Can you-
recycled that
Can you
are.
just go to the microphone?
Oh, sorry. Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah, sorry about that. I'm Adrienne Goldman, 50 Mill Pond, North Andover. I'm part of the Sustainability Committee. I met you all 3 years ago when I originally did the presentation before COVID. And these wonderful people have enhanced the research and presentation considerably, so thank you all. Yes, the incineration of plastic is an issue. We have a little more work to do because I do agree with the conversation here. But it's not just incineration of plastic. It's plastic that goes into the ground and the land. The slide that bothers me the most is that plastic never fully biodegrades. It breaks down to tiny little particles. So if it's litter or it's trash that doesn't get incinerated or it's wherever plastic is in our environment, even in our local community, it will be there for 10,000 years. It'll break down, but it'll go into the soil and the waterways and into wildlife and back into the food chain and back onto our dinner plates. To me, that is the thing that bothers me the most. More than the litter, the toxins in the air is something serious to consider. But yeah, my point is just that, yes, incineration is something to look into, but there's a lot of other factors too. Litter,
I don't disagree, especially right now, after the winter. There's nothing uglier than looking at plastic bags up in our trees.
Right,
Where
right.
that will never come down again.
Right.
No,
And-
I don't disagree with you on that. And right now, you go into, a strip mall and it's all in the brush, it's in the trees.
Yeah.
it's everywhere, and it's ugly.
And it just seems unnecessary when I see all these people leaving with these single-use bags from Market Basket. It's like, it would be so much more efficient if people could adopt.
Well, them in each bag because
Yeah, because
that's what they
they're-
do at Market
right?
Basket.
Right. Because with the reusables, you can load it heavy, and yeah.
If
So,
you can handle it, yeah.
thank you.
Will you be giving any guidance on how to safely use the reusable bags, like encouraging people they need
Wash
to be washed? Perhaps they shouldn't be stored in a basement where there could be other little critters that could jump in. You know, those are the things that, there's a lot to it.
Important, yeah.
And that's great advice. So it wasn't ready yet, but we're producing a fact sheet of questions just like you're raising, Rosemary, that are so helpful and so informative to eventually the citizens here in town of just, as you're saying, why this, the harm that it causes, the benefits of a reusable bag, what you should do with reusable bags in terms of washing them, et cetera. So it just wasn't really ready for prime time yet. But to your point, I think it's important, the information component of all of this to help citizens with it.
It just needs to be a very honest and frank, and this is what we do well, this is where it isn't so well kind of
Yeah.
conversation.
Is that something you might work with the sustainability committee specifically to spread information about?
Yeah, I don't know, at the beginning in your speech, so Adrian, as part of the Sustainability Committee, we actually worked really closely with them when we started this and asked, you know, is this something that you want to lead? Did you want us to lead it? And we have your support.
right.
So we have their full support. I know Andrew's here. And we've been working closely with them all along the way, showing them the presentation as we've been building it, getting feedback. So great point, Janice.
I think it'll be good to get that information out on whether it's the town website or if it passes. right?
Yeah.
And just kind of do a social media blast and kind of get that feed, or the different steps that people can take out to the citizens.
Yeah.
I know, change is hard for everybody, but.
No, for sure. Yeah, we know that's probably the most difficult.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
is hard, but I appreciate you guys putting this together and all your hard
Yeah,
work, and
thanks.
being cognizant of our small businesses is really important. But these small steps certainly can impact all our generations to come.
Yeah, yeah. We really cared about them. That's why we had a number of volunteers that went out to the businesses with a survey, having conversation, listening to that owner that had 3 businesses and hearing the impact, and putting in that provision of 3,000 square feet or less so that it would be less impactful. And knowing eventually it's actually going to benefit that business because of the reduced costs over time. But initially that it will be a little bit, of a challenge.
Yeah.
So. And to your point, I just wanted to let you know about the website and getting on the town website. Adrian actually has a prototype. She started a website. It'd be great at some point if we can link it to North Andover's one if it passes for the informational purposes. I know you want to say something there.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I always think of that, love your business and bring your own bag, BYOB, right? So they don't have to spend any money on, getting the paper bags or the plastic, just love your business, bring your own bag.
What do you feel as though the paper bags they would charge for that? Do you have any idea? Or you're not there yet?
No, we do. We have a general sense. In fact, just more research came today that paper bags are about double of what one plastic bag is. So one paper bag is about double the cost of a plastic bag. So plastic bags run around 4 cents or 0.04 cents. I forget which. And it's double with paper. So paper bags are more expensive. But of course, then the hope is, and the whole thing about the change is that you're converting people from not selecting a paper bag, but they're bringing in their own in.
If you can carry it, carry it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we really believe that this will hopefully spark a culture change across the town. So getting people more used to carrying their reusable bags with them, even if they do go in one of these smaller businesses that are exempt, we envision that it is a culture change that people will start using the reusable more at all the businesses in town, which will save the businesses money ultimately.
Do you think that the plastic reusable bags, meaning the heavy plastic, like
Yeah.
vinyl,
Yeah.
is a better way to go because you just wipe those down versus throwing them in your washing machine?
No, because
With the
eventually
cloth ones.
they become refuge, right? Garbage. They become the problem. They're not.
I
And the
understand.
handles will rip way sooner than a stitched handle on a reusable bag.
And then it's just another heavier plastic.
Now it's, yeah, now it's heavier than, yeah.
Okay, I got, yeah, good point.
It's a good, yeah, it's a good question. We had thought about that too. And then all the towns that have passed that have really analyzed that question too and saw that was more problematic for their goals for their town.
Okay, well, you've given us a lot to think about, and I
Yeah.
hope you can get some straight answers with documents to back it up on the wheelabrator,
Yeah.
on a bunch of the things that we talked about.
Yeah, we didn't quote a lot of the research, but a lot of it's backed up with the research, but except for Wheelabrator, we didn't talk to them directly, so that's a good, thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
They're actually rather nice people.
Yeah, yeah.
No, truly, they are.
Yeah, no, that's
So
good.
I'm sure
That's
they'd
good
be
to know.
helpful.
Oh, good, okay, appreciate that.
If not, let me know, I know someone.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you.
Can we ask one question? Do we know yet if it will still stay as Article 14? Is that, to be decided tonight, or?
It should, I don't, right?
Yeah, the article then was when
It
it
won't
was changed
change,
now.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take this down. Okay.
Okay. We're going to move on to new business item C, which is taking a look at our ambulance rates. So I am going to turn it over to all of the people who are here to talk about it.
Talk about ambulance rates. I'm going to give a quick presentation.
Perfect.
We do have Jeff, Shane, and Chief Ware here if there's anything that I cannot answer. This is similar to the presentation that we did back in 2020, which feels like 1 million years ago. But
Yeah,
yeah.
this is right.
All right, and so this presentation goes along with the information that was in the packet and the memo. And so today, we're just talking about having a change to our ambulance rates. As you know, we currently operate a BLS ambulance service. We contract with an outside contractor for all of our billing purposes. All of the money that we get from using our ambulance goes into the general fund and is used as a revenue source in the following year. The last time we increased our ambulance rate was July of 2020. I usually like to do this annually. With COVID, we kind of took a break from it. But these proposed rates would be effective July 1st, 2023. So our current BLS emergency rate is $1,414. And for ComStar, who is the group that does our billing, Essex County average BLS emergency rate is $1,502.86. So we're running a little bit behind the average in our area.
Just to define BLS, basic life support.
That's correct, yes. So these are our current rates. So for our BLS basic services, we are charging $1,414. For our ALS 1 and 2, so that's if it's an emergency that our ambulances cannot handle, we triage with Lawrence General or someone else if Lawrence General is not available, and we charge higher rates for those. Those rates we are not proposing any changes to. And then our mileage, our current rate is $32.73. We did not change that in 2020, and we are seeking to change that tonight.
I'm sorry,
The middle column
I
is-
know what it says, but I'm not sure what that means.
So that's what we pay to Medicare and Medicaid if it's a Medicare and Medicaid patient.
Okay.
If it's a private pay patient, then it's the current rates. Because Medicaid and Medicare cap the payments. And jump in if I'm getting anything wrong. Just, all right. So this is just the stats from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. We did a total of 1,891 transports. Of those, approximately 72% were basic life. We collected a little over $1 million, and about 74% of the payments do come from Medicaid and Medicare, so we're really only talking about 26% of what we bill. So our rate proposal is a BLS emergency rate of $1,500, so slightly less than what the average is in the area, and increasing the mileage to $39. And I think kind of one of the things that's important as we're talking about the mileage is that in July of 2020, diesel fuel cost $2.65. In March of 2023, diesel fuel cost $4.63, so obviously a big change in what we've been paying for gasoline or diesel. And these are some of the things that go into the cost of providing the service. So obviously, we have a lot of training that we do. We have to maintain and calibrate the ambulance and all of our equipment. We replace our ambulance. We have licensing and inspection fees. We pay our billing company. We have to pay for the pharmaceuticals and our medical supplies, and those have unfortunately been increasing. The medical supplies has increased actually by 12%. We have our own insurance that we pay. We pay a patient care report licensing fee, and then we have automatic stretchers, and so we pay preventative maintenance on those as well. And then I'm happy to answer any questions, as is Jeff and Chief Ware, but we do think this is a fair addition to our rates.
So I'm just curious, the Medicare and Medicaid, so if they're considerably less, who picks that up?
What do you mean, who picks it up?
Well, the difference in the cost.
So there is no difference in cost. Basically, we don't bill the patient or anything like that. They're billed at a lower rate if they have Medicaid and Medicare. Do you have anything you want to add? Come on up if you want to add anything. But yeah, they're just billed at a lower rate, and then anybody that's either self-pay or on private insurance is billed at the higher rate.
But so with that
That's kind of where
delta,
it gets picked up, I think. Right at the high
that's what I'm
end.
trying to say. So with that delta, who picks that up? Because
What do you
that's a
add?
big-
So if you're billing a Medicaid or Medicare patient, that's all we bill them. So they don't get an additional bill for the rest of it or anything like that.
No, but I mean, somebody's got to pay for it somewhere.
No, so under CMS
Jeff, how are you?
guidelines, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they establish the rates, just like the state of Massachusetts does for Medicaid patients. So we are basically capped at billing someone who has Medicare at $435.92. Even though it costs us more to run that call because of the skill set, the medications, the equipment we're using, the town is only recovering $435.92 for a Medicare or Medicaid patient.
We operate at a loss. The money we collect from ambulance, the $1 million, does not offset the cost of us running the ambulance. It's only a portion of the fire department's budget.
So what about the towns that don't run an ambulance that we respond to? Do we get anything
So
from those towns?
are you talking like a mutual aid?
Mm-hmm.
So we actually do respond mutual aid across the Merrimack Valley here. So let me just get you the exact numbers. So last year, we were able to provide mutual aid to the town of Andover for 91 times. So what happens normally is whoever does the transport is allowed to bill under CMS guidelines for that particular insurance. So we were able to bill Andover residents 91 times for services that we provided inside that community.
That were not Medicare or Medicaid, so those were their full,
Not necessarily.
Right. It's only for
okay,
us to
just
know.
total,
Yeah.
okay, could be either.
Right.
Okay.
Boxford, we responded 6 times. Georgetown once. Lawrence 97 times. Methuen 5 times.
So if we're helping another community, we're losing. If it's a Medicare or
Well,
Medicaid
not-
call, we're losing.
Not necessarily. I
Okay.
mean, if it's a regular commercial insured patient, then we
We'll get
are.
reimbursed
Correct.
the higher level.
Correct. And then there's times that we have our ambulances tied up here
Yep.
on calls because there's multiple
we
calls
need-
going on once. So we received mutual aid 74 times from Andover, 10 times from Methuen, 4 times from Middleton, and 2 times from Lawrence.
Do all of those communities run their own ambulance services, or do any of them contract?
So Andover, Methuen, Middleton, they all run their own ambulance through the fire department. And then Lawrence is contracted with Lawrence General Hospital.
Don't misunderstand my question. We need to provide the service. I mean, that's what our job is. That's what
Absolutely.
towns do. But I was just curious as to what happens.
Yeah, there's
So
no
there's-
additional billing that's done for a Medicaid or Medicare patient. They're just billed at a lower rate.
So each year for the past 5 years, the fire department, working with the town manager's office, we've applied for something called the CPE, which is the Capital Plan Expenditure for Medicaid. And what that does is that gives back the town a percentage of money that's able to be collected from the state for our Medicaid patients. So this year, we're anticipating about $157,000 back.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
But a community like Boxford that doesn't run their own ambulance, it's not like they're providing mutual aid back, right?
Right, so they wouldn't be able to provide mutual aid because they actually contract out to a private. So the times that we responded to Boxford,
Yeah.
their private ambulance was tied up probably on another call, and that's why. So probably about a year and a half ago, at the height of COVID and stuff, the Essex County Fire Chiefs, they came up with an EMS ambulance run card, very similar to like a fire department mutual aid response card as well. So now we know who we're covering in which community based upon the number of ambulances that are actually required.
Is the mileage billed
It's
for mutual aid? Who gets billed the mileage, I guess?
So the
like if we're
insurance-
going to
Yeah, so the insurance company gets billed the mileage.
also, okay.
So, so for example, if we're in the town of Andover, it's per loaded mile. It doesn't include our response there, but it's from the time that we pick up the patient to the time that we drop them off at their receiving facility.
The mileage to get there is not covered.
Mileage to get there is not covered. Nope. And again, those guidelines are established by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Thank you for answering all the questions.
And we will
Any
plan
other-
to come back annually, as long as we don't end up in a pandemic again, knock on wood. But the plan will be to come back annually like we do for the Stevens Estate.
And that 1,500, is that something that we know the insurance, is that a rate that the insurance would cover?
So they're actually, right, so right now, if you look at the presentation, currently right now, Comstar, who the town is contracted with, they're actually billing a little above that right now, and they're collecting that from private insurers. So it's basically money that we're leaving on the table.
Yep, right, yep.
I can answer one question. I know some talk has been about the mutual aid. We had a meeting, some of the area chiefs, myself, with the regional director from Office of Emergency Management for Region 4, and we were asking specifically about the number of times we were going out of town as private ambulances or having problems with staffing. And they made it pretty clear to us, if you have a licensed ambulance in the state and somebody calls and needs an ambulance and you're the next one, you have no choice under your ambulance license to respond.
Sure.
So,
That totally
That
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it makes sense. It becomes a financial burden to the towns that run their own ambulances, right?
it does. And it's becoming an issue further and further as our call volume's going up, and a lot of that attributed to, we talked earlier about, I know there was some discussion about nursing homes and healthcare facilities in town, a lot of having issues with private ambulance services not being able to staff. So they're not able to enter into contracts that they previously had, which is putting more call volume on us. But right now, our call volume is up approximately 25% of where it was. At this time, coming into, we're just finishing up our third quarter. We're doing the same number of transports right now as we did for the entire year last year. So our call volume is very high right now. So this change here will obviously help us a little bit. We estimate conservatively this will probably be somewhere about over $220,000 if we do the same volume next year. And again, this doesn't affect anyone on Medicare, Medicaid. All the provisions are still in place for abatements. If somebody gets a bill that they can't pay, there's town manager, there's a set policy where you can apply to get your bill abated and stuff. So basically, this just impacts the bills that are sent to the private insurance companies, exactly.
It's a pretty modest increase if it has been the same for so many years.
It is, and I believe it was 2012, like the manager said, it was 2020 was the last time we did it. Prior to that, it was 2012, I believe, was the first time prior to that. And we've held the 32-cent mileage cap going back to 2012. That's never increased, so.
I know we're not
Thank you.
talking about this right now, but it does tie in. Nobody could be more grateful for mutual aid when the Columbia gas fires happened. They came from everywhere to help us, but it's a different, but it isn't. that's what you guys need to do. You all have to help each other because someday it's going to be our turn, whether it's ambulance or fire. So I think we're all very grateful for the benefit of having that system. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, like Jeff had said, the number of mutual aids that we relied on other towns for was above 80. I think the number you gave was 74, and then a couple others. So, you know, we do.
It works out pretty well, and it's a life. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Motion.
Madam Chair, I would select board approve the rate increase for basic life service emergency ambulance service to $1,500 and the mileage rate to $39.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you for coming. All right, we're going to move on to item D, which is our recommendations for warrant articles 1 through 11 and 31 through 37. And I think I'm going to hand that right over to our town manager.
Gonna look right back in. Okay. So today we're gonna do some warrant articles. Just for the people at home, because I did give some residents my word, we are not going to take any action on Article 10 today because we are waiting for some documents from KP Law. Our first article that we'll be reporting on is Article 1, which is our report of receipts and expenditures. It's required by town bylaw that we do a town report annually. And this is just accepting that.
Madam Chair, I will move favorable action on Article 1.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And we're gonna talk about each one. We're not gonna take 1 through 4, okay.
Oh, well, if you want. Okay.
You said Article 1, so.
Yes, and then Article 2.
Yeah. Sorry.
So you're good. Article 2 is contracts in excess of 3 years. So this allows the town manager and the superintendent to sign contracts in excess of 3 years. Any contract over 3 years does need select board approval. An example of a contract that we sign that is more than 3 years, for instance, is rent on the town's postage machine. And so we usually do that to take advantage of the best prices.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move favorable action on Article 2.
I have a motion and a second for favorable action. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
All right, we will take Articles 3 and 4 collectively.
Okay.
That is authorization to accept and grant easements. And so this does allow the town to accept and grant easements for any public purpose. For those at home that don't know, an easement is a right to use someone else's land for a particular purpose. We often accept easements for things like extensions of sidewalks or for utility purposes, and we often grant easements to the utility company or the Commonwealth, for instance.
I will move that the select board recommend favorable action on Article 3 and 4.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 5 is the housekeeping article, and so the article actually contradicts itself. So it states that the select board will set the town clerk's fees, and then it goes right ahead and sets the town clerk's fees. So this amends it by removing those fees so that you can revisit them annually.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I'll move that the select board recommend favorable action on Article 5.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
All right, so the next few articles are all local options. So a local option is a state law the town can accept in order to achieve a certain goal. Article 6 is a local option that would allow the town to increase the annual asset limits to qualify for any of the Clause 17 tax exemptions. So currently, the exemption allows for a $175 credit towards your real estate, eligible person's real estate taxes. And you have to be either a senior citizen, a surviving spouse, or a surviving minor. So you have a parent who had passed away while you're a minor. And to earn this exemption, that person has to meet specific ownership, occupancy, and asset amounts. This would allow us to change those asset amounts to allow more people to qualify for the exemption.
Okay, any questions?
Any reason that we're increasing it, or just?
Well, we'd like more people to be eligible. Currently, the asset amounts are very, very low. So it's a small change.
That's
Hold on, I'm just
is
gonna
that the 30 and 28? 30,000?
pull- Yeah, so it brings it from,
Still gonna be.
yes, so it brings it from, now you would have 30,000 if married and 28,000 if single. Currently, it's 26,000 if married and 24,000 if single.
So they're very, very low.
Still very low.
Still very low, but it
Very
allows
low.
us to
A few
increase
more,
it,
okay.
yeah, to have more people qualify.
It doesn't sound like reasonable either. It's still
It's still low, and it changes annually, obviously. And it's income limits that are set by the Department of Revenue.
Okay. Any
I
other
think it's 26
questions?
and
I will take a motion.
Favorable action on Article 6.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so Article 7 is along the same lines. It is acceptance of a local option that would allow the town to increase the annual income and asset limits to any of the qualifying Clause 41 exemptions, which is a grouping of senior citizen property tax exemptions. And so this would allow an additional $500 credit toward the qualifying senior citizens' annual real estate taxes. This would allow a $500 credit toward the qualifying senior citizens' annual real estate taxes.
Any other questions?
So again, it's
about
just
this?
lowering the annual, increasing the annual income and lowering the asset limits.
Up to 30, yeah. Okay.
I'll move that the select board recommend favorable action on Article 8.
Okay, I have a motion
Second that?
and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And in the warrant article of the day, we are linking to the taxpayers' guides for all of these local tax exemptions, so people can educate themselves on them if they think
If
they
they
may
qualify.
qualify. Yes. The next one, which is Article 8, is another local option and would allow the town to increase the property tax exemption amounts by up to twice the current limit allowed. So for example, the legally blind tax exemption, which is currently $500, would increase to $1,000. So using all of these together, we're able to lower the income limits, higher the asset limits, and then also increase the amount of the exemptions. So they're a good tool to help help some of our different populations. This increase would be paid for by the town through the tax overlay account, and we do anticipate that we have funding available in there. Accepting this article at the 100%, so doubling it, because there is availability to do it at different levels, would cost the town approximately $75,000 per year.
Okay, any questions?
And we cover that to that overlay.
Through our overlay account, yes.
I'll take a motion.
I'll move favorable action on Article 8.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Oh, we got Article 9.
No, that was.
That was Article 8.
That was 8.
You got it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, it's
No.
Article 9. It's also the acceptance of a local option, and what this would do would allow the town to abate real property residential and property taxes, real estate and property taxes for any member of the Massachusetts National Guard or reservist on active duty in a foreign country. So this would be somebody who has been activated, is currently serving across the world, but not in the United States. We don't have an idea of who would be eligible for this right now. Speaking with our veterans agent, he can't think of anyone, but it's possible that once we pass this, somebody may come forward.
Would it still apply if their spouse was living here and they were?
Yes,
Okay,
yep,
that's.
just has to be a member
okay.
of the, yep. And this article does require a biannual vote.
Okay. Any other questions about this? Yeah, me
Great
too.
one, yeah.
Madam Chair, I'll move favorable action.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, again, we're not gonna do anything on Article 10, and then Article 11, which is I think the last one in my little grouping here, is withdrawal of fire department from civil service. So as you know, we did this last year for the police department. Both the administration and the fire union are in favor of this article. The town will maintain our preferences for candidates from North Andover and those who are veterans. D&I are still actively meeting with the fire department on all of their revocation language.
Okay, any questions?
I'll move that the select board recommend favorable action on Article 11.
I'll second
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you. Article 12 is withdrawn, in case you were wondering.
And now we're heading to
Yeah.
31.
So that takes us down to Article 31, which was the amendment to the inclusionary zoning.
Just have to get there.
All of these have favorable action by the planning board.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Madam Chair, I'll move favorable action for Article 31.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Article 32 was the floodplain article. And obviously, this is a requirement that we do this.
Madam Chair, I'll move favorable action on Article 32.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay,
Article 33 is the continuing care retirement center bylaw.
I'll move favorable action.
I'll second.
okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, I'm just trying to scroll fast enough to keep up.
It's
a lot of pages.
Take your time. Article 34 is the article that would be laying out a process for Dover projects.
I think that's well needed. Gives us some control, so I would move favorable action for Article 34.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second for Article 34. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, and then Articles 35, 36, and 37 are the child care facility articles. In my opinion, these articles really are housekeeping to make sure
Yeah.
that our definitions adhere to the law.
Yeah, it's the language changes, really.
Housekeeping.
Madam Chair, I'll move favorable action on Articles 35, 36, and 37.
Thank you. I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that is all we're doing tonight,
Okay.
because we haven't had all the citizens in yet, and the Finance Committee has their public hearing Thursday? Wednesday?
I think.
So once they go ahead and do that, we can move forward with the rest of the articles.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item E. Thank you, Mr. Mealy, for hanging out. We're here to vote on ARPA funding in the amount of $35,000 for the security and emergency preparedness assessment for the schools.
You know something, in light of the action of today, I will move favorable action on this right now.
I have one quick question. You included a lot of good stuff. Did you already get a quote? Like, because it said it was independent of, it depended on the school system, right? It was a flat rate.
And that was based
Yeah.
on the size of our
Okay,
school
perfect.
system. And Rosemary stole my line. I was going to say, it's unfortunate that, these keep becoming timely requests.
They shouldn't ever be timely requests.
Yep.
I have a question. Does this study, or have you guys looked into some sort of, I think it's called like Response 911, or something that gives the teachers immediate access to the police department?
So this is an assessment. I think you all know that we recently are just completing the installation of video coverage throughout the schools, as well as access control. Again, going back to timely, we had a multi-year plan for that, but then Uvalde happened, and Tom Manager was able to secure funding to allow us to do that in 1 year. This is an assessment to follow that up, that will look at our policies and procedures. We have an excellent relationship with the fire, the police, emergency preparedness. It'll look at that relationship. It'll look at what we have in place and make recommendations for us going forward. And it's also timely, again, for some of the construction that's going on, because they talk about where you should place, your central office. And so as we renovate our buildings and build a new school, that'll be come in handy as well.
So it's something they look at, right? Our communication and all that.
Communication is a
Is
big part of it. Yep.
Okay, good.
Awesome. Okay, we have already had a motion for approval, so. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight and hanging on till the end, I know.
Stole your thunder.
Our next item is the approval of minutes, and I'd like to take a motion to approve the open session minutes of March 13th, 2023. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Okay, I'll take a motion.
Move that the select board approve the open session minutes of March 13th, 2023 as presented.
I have a motion. And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Moving on to town manager's report.
My one and only reminder is that tomorrow, March 28th, 2023, is the town election. The polls open at 7 and will remain open until 8. All voting will take place at North Andover High School, located at 430 Osgood Street. The ballot includes the Select Board, School Committee, Housing Authority, and Greater Lawrence Technical School District Committee.
That would have been my update too, so any select board updates?
Excuse me, we have a meeting scheduled for the 24th of April, and then we moved the AT&T hearing tonight. I'm going to be out of town on the 24th of April, so I'll be out from the 20th until whenever that following Monday is, so I
Right.
think we
Okay.
discussed
We-
about
yeah, we
possibly
started to
moving
talk
the
about that.
meeting at
Yeah.
some point, or not, but maybe we can, maybe in our next meeting, if people can think about it, we can discuss dates that maybe we'll move it to.
We'll have to catch up.
Yeah, we'll just
To-
have to let the applicant know and send out a notice,
Okay, so
Or
we'll,
we put on the agenda for the 10th and continue it again.
continue it again, change the date. That would do.
yeah,
Great, thank you.
that's a great idea. Okay, thank you. Any other select board updates or comments? No? All right. Our next meeting will be Monday, April 10th at 7 PM, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?